Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Core Advantage Random Thoughts Show.
Yeah.
We thought we might talk about Olympic lifting today.
Yeah. Bit of a narrower topic, but there's some stuff to unpack there and some stuff to talk about.
Olympic lifting is amazing. When you see it done well, it's just like, ooh, it's amazing.
Pretty.
It's so cool. Yeah.
To be clear as well, Olympic lifting is the clean and jerk or any variation of, and the snatch where you take the bar from the ground all the way up overhead and then stand back up in a squat. And so they're the lifts you'll see at the Olympics, but there are plenty of breakdowns and variations and derivatives you can use as training exercises in the gym.
Yeah, and it's essentially just learning to move a bar really fast, and in the pursuit of that, often it's developing some physical qualities along the way that are handy for a transfer sport.
Which is our favourite part of it, yeah.
So I love Ollie lifting, but at the same time, it's probably one of my biggest sources of frustration and anger, seeing how badly it's done, how much of it is done really badly, and then how the people that do it will often, they'll say they're getting a certain thing out of it, and they're not.
Yeah, and so the Olympic lifting, I suppose to go back a step, the Olympic lifting purists will say that you have to do the full lifts.
Yeah.
And so it's like everything is about chasing a full snatch or a full clean and jerk. But given our job is athletic development here at Core Advantage, we actually don't really care too much about the full lift, and it's very nice and very pretty. But for our athletes, we just want to be able to load and move really fast through versions of the full lift that are comfortable for our athletes and suit their anatomy. Because
the Olympic lifting aficionado, he or she is, competing or coaching people who are going to go to competitions where you Olympic lift. So their why is very straightforward. Why are you focused on the Olympic lifts? Because that's what I compete in.
Because that's our end game is on the platform.
Whereas the why people are coming to us, no one is coming to us because they want to be able to move a bar at higher velocity.
And we don't have any Olympic lifters or power lifters in the gym.
They're coming to train with us and to train with strength and conditioning coaches in general because they want to run fast, jump high, hit hard, be bulletproof. They want
etc.
They want all that stuff. Yeah. And so the why, that's the one why of the why you're actually doing it. And then I guess the what is another thing where people will say what they're getting out of it is triple extension. That's my big, when it's done well, you get amazing triple extension.
Which is, triple extension refers to extension at the hip, the knee, and the ankle. So effectively what happens when you jump is your entire lower body lengthens out and extends up.
Yeah. And they'll say that's why you're doing it. And yet so few people actually, if you slow-mo people doing it, so few people are actually getting triple extension. I think that's my big, if I could have one quest to make stuff, and I'm not really much about caring what other people are doing. Like we're more just run our own race. Yep. But if we could really sort that out, that'd be nice because you see, particularly out of the US system, out of the college system, where you've got one strength coach, 80 athletes, and they have to do Olympic lifting because they've been told by the athletic director.
Yep.
They did not have the time to teach it well, so they teach that donkey kick thing.
Yeah, where you start with the bar and you sort of dip your way into it, and then use momentum to flick the bar up. But instead of flicking the bar up and then extending, you kind of tuck your legs up into a little ball and then sort of pop back under the bar.
Yeah, it's high-speed ducking.
So there's no real extension component to the lift. And so the one quality that I think is the best part of Olympic lifting for athletes is not actually being addressed.
Yeah, like the best thing about Ollie lifting is this beautiful, violent triple extension.
Yep.
And they're just not getting that at all. Yeah. So where do we start? So number one, I think sometimes a case is made, and I respectfully disagree with this case, that you should just start and you kind of clean up the pattern along the way.
And it's just like keep letting the weight go up, and weight's first, pattern second, and we'll just see what happens, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's just in total contravention to everything that sports science
and motor learning would tell you. Yeah,
yeah. And I think the problem is that people don't have the freedom or the courage to just do really basic things and not worry about the complex things. A couple of years ago at the ASCA, the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association conference, there was the head of strength and conditioning at the AIS, Julian. I feel really rude because I've forgotten his name, but it was a great presentation.
Never met Julian.
We'll see if we can find.
I'll find Julian's name.
And he was just talking about, and the presentation was breakdowns of Olympic lifting. Great topic. And one of them was, and he's, if you had to summarize the whole hour-long presentation, it would be most people should probably just do some jump strokes.
Yeah. So, and
I think you're actually getting what you think. You're chasing hip extension, and you're getting hip extension.
We should talk about some of the different breakdowns.
Yeah. Okay.
And we should talk about some of the details, because then I think for those who aren't as enlightened on the Olympic lift stuff, who haven't as much experience around it, we'll then be able to follow along as we dive into the pros and cons.
Okay. Cool.
So you've got the full clean and jerk,
Yep.
which we take the bar from the ground to your shoulders into a full depth front squat.
Yep.
You squat back up, and then you jerk the bar overhead. And then you've got the snatch, which is the other full one, which you go from ground all the way in one continuous motion overhead, and then you squat back up. They're the two full lifts. Anything that's a power variation is where you don't squat all the way under the bar. So that has more extension, the bar floats for longer, and then you catch it higher. Yep. And they're the versions I suppose we like the most.
So let's talk about why we don't like the full versions, first, why they need modifying.
Yeah, what's the weaknesses, I suppose.
Yeah. So, and they're great for competition, like they are what they are. But for translation into sport, for dealing with athletes that are playing running sports, I think the first thing is the height of the bar off the ground. The diameter of the plates.
450 or 440 millimeters.
And a lot of people, you'll ask them, do you know why the plates are that diameter? And they're like, just designed for biomechanics, like the correct height in order.
Most people can reach it. Yeah.
No. Short answer that you found is that the lathe.
Yeah, it was the size of the lathe they had to make the wheels effectively at the time. So it was the biggest circle they could draw in steel.
It was just arbitrary. Like you could definitely make them bigger. And in fact, if you were going to, what you'd have is if you were starting over with ollie lifting
and bars and plates,
and you were applying it to athletes, what you'd have is a series of different sizes. Yeah, based on your height. So
you'd have the 440s, you'd have the 480s, the 520s, and you just keep going out like that.
Yeah. That's never going to happen because that's too much. It's impossible to manufacture. There's not the volume, and it's just a standard thing. But yeah, so the biggest problem you have with the traditional lifts, I think, is that they're off the ground, and for everyone over 5'10", almost everyone, that is problematic if you are trying to maintain neutral spine.
Yeah, and protect the discs of the lower back.
And for us, that's non-negotiable because we know that you get so much bang for buck out of that. So straight away, you can't do those ones because you actually need to be off blocks or off the hang.
Or off a rack even, yeah.
A rack, yeah.
Some form of elevation to the bar to bring yourself into a position where you can maintain good spinal alignment and create power from a safe position.
So that's the first issue, is that you've got to modify them to create a safe range of motion. And then the second modification is you've got to modify them, I think, to have less of an emphasis around the ducking and getting under the bar. Because the ducking makes the weight move, and it's a very clever sort of party trick.
So it's all the duck is all about efficiency.
Yeah,
it's all about can I do less extension to have this bar just sort of hang in the middle of the air, so I don't have to lift it as high, get under it, and then use my squat position, that sort of full depth squat, as the stronger way to get the bar up to shoulder height.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
It's a very clever hack to get a bar airborne.
Just like in powerlifting, you go to a sumo stance to shorten up the range of motion on your deadlift.
Yeah.
You would do the same in Olympic lifting. You duck further under the bar so that you can be more efficient and lift heavier weights.
And so they're looking for ways to make it easier, not looking for ways to make the athlete perform better.
For more translation to vertical leap. That's not their goal.
It's a different thing. And so I think you've got to modify there as well. So then now what you're looking at is, the third thing is the sheer level of neurological complexity.
It is a complex skill.
And what we're learning more and more is that our neurological resources are finite and easily depleted. And so you have, if you're an elite athlete, you have so many competing demands on your cognition.
For example, check out our last 2 episodes, which talked about AFL and all the things that need to be developed for one sport.
Yeah, and so you might not just have the time or the neurological budget to have all your people spend all this time getting good at these really complex lifts, when there's this ability to just chop out the bits you need and take that.
Yeah.
Because the active ingredient of it is violent hip extension with an external load.
Yeah.
That's the active ingredient. Well, not hip extension, triple extension, I suppose.
Loaded triple stick extension.
Yeah.
That's what we're chasing.
Yeah.
With velocity.
Yeah. And so a great way you can get that is by stripping out some of the complexities and actually just doing some real basics.
So like the hang power shrug, which has no catch, no deep squat position, no deadlift from the ground. Just take the bar to just above or just below your knees.
Can we talk about the catch? Sorry, the catch is such an important thing to touch on.
Yeah, so we touched on the depth issue when it comes to neutral spine and protecting your lower back and those positions. Also, the catch on both the snatch and on the clean introduce a whole level of complexity as well.
Yeah.
First of all, with the clean, you've got an enormous requirement for mobility. So there's an enormous requirement for external rotation and shoulder flexion that has you get into this really uncomfortable position for a lot of people, and it also can jam a lot of people's wrists up into extension as well.
I can't, since my broken wrist, I can't go near it. Like my wrist's pretty good for day-to-day life, but it's not going to like cleaning. Yeah.
And so if you've got skill-based athletes, netballers, tennis players, basketballers, they're not going to like getting into that position, and that's going to be pretty uncomfortable on their wrists.
And the question comes back to, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it worth for the potential of stirring them up and plus all the effort because the catch is not actually particularly beneficial. Like that's not where you're getting your value. That's just where you stop the exercise.
That's just the finish. That's a predetermined point based on tradition.
Whereas the active ingredient is the impulse to move at the start. That's the bit that matters.
And so the hang shrug therefore is saying, well, why don't we just do the extension and then sort of let the bar float a bit, bring it back down, and then catch with the bar the whole time staying below your hips, so it never actually lifts up. And so you shrug into the bar, and you can go heavier, which means you can get more neural load and more neural adaptation without the stress of the catch, without the risk of a bar coming up near your chin, which can be a little frightening the first couple of times you do it. And you still can progressively overload that. This short pulse of movement, this short pulse of triple extension with a nice safe catch.
As long as it's not so short that you're not getting the extension.
As long as you're not doing that flicking donkey kick or tuck thing. You've still got to get to extension.
I hate the donkey kick. And I think it doesn't have to be that simple. You can still do other lifts. So, for instance, a relatively narrow grip hang snatch.
Yeah, the mid grip hang snatch is a great one.
That's a really good movement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where it doesn't matter how tall you are, you can get in the right position, and you can really flick it through, and you're throwing it overhead, but not into such a wide position that your shoulders are really stressed out by it.
Because again, with the snatch and the catch position, the reason you go with the wider hand grip is so that you don't have to go as high.
Yeah,
it's an efficiency thing.
Just everything is about minimizing the time and effort. It's just all about minimizing time under tension. It's like minimizing the time and effort to
so you can lift a heavier load for a short amount of time. And so for Olympic lifting, shout out to any Olympic lifters who are listening, that is brilliant. You should chase that aggressively, and you should look to be as efficient as possible from the platform if you're going to compete.
Because your sport is doing that exact task. Spend all day on that.
But if your goal is vertical leap, speed, agility, physical qualities for a different sport, then you just chop out the bits that are good and you get rid of the bits that are not so good.
Yeah.
So a mid grip snatch with a real focus on velocity and really trying to get that bar flying up towards the roof, and then you can catch it as tall as you like. You don't have to worry about ducking underneath it. That allows you a lot of room, and it's a lot easier from a motor skill point of view. So you can learn that skill, you can learn that movement quite comfortably.
And I think, and then you get tremendous benefits. I think there is some. I think the benefits are twofold. I think there's the direct benefit within sport of being able to you've got better ability to send a stronger signal to your muscles. So bigger motor units,
faster rate coding, synchronization, all those fancy things.
All those software upgrades plus hardware.
Yeah, and you'll also, if you do it consistently, you'll change your motor units as well, like we mentioned in the last episode. Yep. And
you will. I mean, if you've ever seen, we'll try and find it. The YouTube clip of the Chinese Olympic lifters jumping onto
the box jumps on the plates?
Onto the plates.
That's crazy.
Those guys are amazing.
Just popping up there.
Yeah, those guys are just flying, and that's a definite output you get. But I don't think that output, unless you're willing to commit really heavily to it, I'm not sure that's as widely available as people think. I think what you do get though is you get like a knock-on effect. I need a drink. Sorry.
I think you're about to talk about that effect of the speed of the lift helping your strength lifts. That complementary effect, that post-activation potentiation effect.
Yeah. And so in simple terms, what we've seen is that when you do start to master some basic breakdowns of Olympic lifts, all of a sudden that ability to create some velocity on the bar, you then take that with you into your core lift or your squat, and you suddenly start doing that with better intent to move. You start doing that faster. And that's probably where you're getting most of your change, I think, because we're not doing meaningful numbers with the ollie lifting.
Yeah, and when Durham says master, we should be clear that master is become
It's all relative.
generally
Become proficient.
Generally proficient at some basic breakdowns. That's the level to which we do our Olympic lifting here.
Like, wrong word. Master.
Because we are not Olympic lifting experts. None of us here have competed, so we don't know it to the the finest nuanced detail. But we know enough to get the adaptations we're chasing, which is the physical qualities, not the competition based qualities.
I still maintain for us that not being competitive at that actually in some ways is an advantage because we're not wedded to it. We're
more flexible in how we use it.
Yeah. Not to say that you can't be an awesome coach if you're also a competitive lifter. That's totally possible. But I think it's harder because you have to have more discipline to step away and go, okay, why am I doing this? What am I getting?
Is it just because I love it and I'm good at it, or is it because it's the best thing for my athletes?
Am I appropriately prioritizing it? Like, is this thing getting the right amount of time in the athlete's budget? Am I getting my bang for buck out of every minute of training? So yeah, I think the basics, those basic breakdowns. What do you think? So a jump shrug,
a jump shrug, a hang power shrug, which are basically the same thing. A mid grip snatch.
Yep.
The dumbbell snatch is an often underrated idea where you go just one arm at a time, because it's sometimes going overhead with two arms can be a bit of a issue
dumbbell
if you
snatch is great.
If you have a mobility restriction. So going one arm at a time, easier to learn, and it's a good primer, like Dan was talking about, to use that as like a complementary exercise with something heavy.
Yeah.
So you go a light or medium weight snatch or hang power clean, which is another good one we like as well. Use one of those versions with your core lift or your squat or your heavy axial loaded exercise gives you what's called post-activation potentiation. And so post-activation potentiation, or PAP, is this concept where traditionally people talk about if you do something heavy and you then go and do something light and fast, you'll get an increased neural output. So you'll increase your vertical leap from having done, say, an isometric squat type exercise where you really try and push the bar really hard, then you go and jump. Because you're sort of upregulated up and warmed up, you can give that a good crack. Whereas I think it also works in reverse, where if you do something fast, like the Olympic lifts, that then flows into your squats and your core lifts quite nicely.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not to say, I want to be clear, it's not to say that you should not, that no one should do proper Olympic lifting. I remember seeing Glenn Manton, former Carlton footy player, played a few clubs maybe.
That sounds like...
I remember seeing him in my local gym doing beautiful ollie lifting, and he'd been taught by my friend Bowden Babicek had taught him how to ollie lift.
Right, yeah.
And Babbitt can teach an ollie lift really well.
He's got some background in that as well.
Yeah, cool. And he was just poetry in motion, and I was like, yeah, you should definitely be doing ollie lifting. Like he was getting exactly what it says on the tin out of it. He was getting triple extension. Yeah. It looked awesome. He felt powerful, and like I think, there's how you feel has a direct impact on your lift as well. Like if you are able to do beautiful ollie lifting at the start of your lift, just prime your nervous system, prime your hormonal system. Like you're going to get elevated testosterone.
There's actually some really good studies that looked at because there's the hormonal theory of hypertrophy. It says your hormones play a big role. And then people say, oh, you need to do 4x10, high volume, high sort of rep range work. And they did some studies where they looked at, well, what if we do 8 singles of Olympic lifting? Yeah. What effect does that have on your hormones? And it was just as good as 4x10.
Because those guys,
like full body, high velocity, eccentric loading with the catch as well. Like it's not to be discredited there as well.
There's some good stuff there.
And so if you can take the decade of time to get it down,
or if you're just a natural mover.
Or if you move beautifully, of course.
Yeah, like some people you go, oh, you're like, it's horses for courses. Some people go, you're the right height, you've got the right length. Let's just go. Yeah. An interesting thing that's popped. So that's our thoughts on ollie lifting. So strip it back down to a point where it's useful for you and you can actually get what you need to get out of it. Yeah. And
within the time constraints and the coach to athlete ratio constraints that you have is a big thing. And with a really rigorous risk reward assessment of what's that athlete stand to benefit? What risk am I exposing that athlete to in pursuing this? Because sometimes it's like, well, we can't go very heavy because of this, and we can't go very fast because of that. And it's like, why are we actually? Maybe that case, you just back out of that alley. Yeah,
back out of that dead end street you've just driven into.
And so one great example is juniors. So juniors, we don't really do any Olympic lifting with.
Don't do much with it.
So instead, we do jump progressions, movement skill work, safer things for their developmental stage.
And occasionally we'll do a little bit. And when they're heading to college, we always do it because you've got to have them prepared because they will go over that situation where maybe there's them and 80 other athletes, so they've got to know what they're doing. This is not Olympic lifting, but if we I want to talk about something that fits under a different umbrella. I want to broaden the umbrella slightly.
Okay.
So if we think of Olympic lifting as learning to move a bar with velocity, so it's learning to move light to moderate weights
with intent.
What I've seen a lot on the internet lately has been the trap bar jump deadlift.
Yes.
That's becoming a thing.
Well, it's been a thing for a while, actually. But we're just seeing it now on Instagram.
Yeah, well, it's been a thing, but I think it's becoming, like, when I say that, I mean, like, obviously it was a thing 5 years ago when we saw it, but I mean, it's really developing some momentum. What do you think? I've seen a few of them, and I've seen a couple of people do it, and I'm like, well, that looks pretty good.
I think the risk-reward ratio on that is not optimal. Is unoptimized for the general punter.
Yeah.
I think for a strength coach who is intimately aware of what's going on, the risks, rewards, how to do it, how not to do it, I think it's okay. But I think for athletes who come in different states of fatigue, different states of readiness, in season, all those factors.
Yeah,
I love the up bit until they hit the ground. Till they come back down.
I saw someone do it the other week, and they hit the ground every time, just beautifully hitting the ground, like really absorbing nicely. And I was like, that just looks awesome. But it's always that thing of if you make one little error if you've got 80 kilos on the bar and you're airborne and you're hanging on to that, because the good thing about lifting is you do let go of the bar before it comes back down. If you're going to the floor,
if you're going full range to the floor, you will catch it in the clean position, and then you just drop it off your shoulders and it'll bounce on the ground. And
that is one of the most. And we didn't talk about that.
Sorry, actually, in most gyms, be careful if you're going to just try
to do it anywhere.
Some commercial gyms will kick you out.
They
for that.
do not like that. Yeah.
Even though that is normal, that is how Olympic lifting is done. They won't listen to you.
They've got neighbours underneath them or whatever it might be. Look, we probably did lifting a disservice when we didn't talk about that bit. So I'm just going to circle back a little bit. We'll come back to the trap bar thing. That benefit of being able to just drop weight means that it's concentric only. So there's almost no muscle damage.
You can significantly reduce the amount of damage, and so therefore accelerate the recovery.
Yeah. Barry Ross, who's Alison Felix, one of the best 400 meter runners.
4s and 2s, I think she runs.
4s and 2s. One of his things is he has people do a deadlift with a drop. Like you pick it up, drop it, pick it up, drop it. He never lets them do the eccentric portion.
Concentric only.
Because he can get a lot of that neurological work into that getting the nervous system firing better, but minus the accompanying damage.
And because they're already getting their eccentric work with their running, they don't need any extra stuff in the gym. They just need to upregulate their strength end of the continuum.
And so when I look at the people doing the jump trap bar deadlifts, I think it looks really good, but it's just what are you risking? What are you gaining? Whereas maybe you're getting most of that benefit like from the style you do. For instance, your core lift, your trap bar deadlift, you're violent with it, so you're nearly getting airborne. But you're
flicking up onto my toes,
not
deliberately, but yeah.
But that means that you're always in a position to just make that catch on the way down a lot easier.
Yeah.
It's an interesting space. It's one of those things where I've always thought I should start doing that. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. Like for me,
it'd be nice. This is going to be tricky to build, but it'd be nice if they had a thing that because it's also a good test. You can test your jump rate of force development on a body weight one, then with half body weight, and then with 1 times body weight on a trap bar. It'd be nice if there was a mechanism that as you go up, like the bar was suspended at the top and you could just let go and it would just stay up there and you just come back to the ground on your own, or you could step out of it somehow.
I know that there was a long time ago, I recall hearing about Dr. Dan Baker, who's a real power expert and president of ASCA and just an amazing all-round.
Done some brilliant work in this space.
Yeah. It was some sort of, like a mechanism where you could do like a jump squat, but it would arrest the weight on the way down.
Yeah, so the bar like stuck at the top and you just came back down without it.
Floats down slowly, or that'd be really cool, but hard to organize.
Yeah, hydraulics and Smith things and mechanisms. Yeah,
but I think where you end up with in a practical sense is doing some breakdowns is just a great way to get better at a fun skill, and provided you keep it appropriate and well coached, it's going to translate into your other lifts where you're going to make your money, as it were, in terms of power output. And you're pretty good, I reckon.
And we should touch on the weight stunting growth thing quickly because that stemmed from Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
We've got a whole episode on that. I'll link to that. But it's also worth mentioning that when you use the breakdowns and you keep the loads moderate to light as opposed to pushing people's 1RMs really intensely, you basically take all those growth plate risk factors down to zero.
So the growth plate thing came from a number of junior Olympic lifting athletes doing really heavy weights, like 100 plus kilos at young ages, damaging growth plates
and full range of motion too.
Because of the impact of the sport. If you do breakdowns though, and you don't go to that full depth, you're absolutely fine. I'm going to tell a cautionary tale.
Please.
So 5 or 6 years ago, through my work with Basketball Victoria, I had an athlete brought along to come and see me when it was just me. And his dad was an Olympic lifting lover. Loved it. Had a home gym. Kind of came along to see me for a bit of a tune-up and some advice. And my tune-up and advice was for the 15-year-old son, you need to stop Olympic lifting. It's messing you up. Don't do it.
So he was doing full competitive level.
He was doing like
lifting?
full proper, like the full unmodified lifting, right down to the deep squat.
Platform-based
stuff, right? And he was getting really strong at it, but I just assessed him and he was just, his glutes weren't activating properly. His back was hypertonic. He had like way too much going on in there. His hip range of motion was like really good at the one thing he needed to do, but bad at everything else.
So internal, external was sort of struggling and things like that.
Yeah. And I just said, this is not, and he was a basketballist. This is not for you. And they didn't take it that well. As people sometimes again. Now, when I was young in my career, I was much more polite with people, and I would say, "Oh, well, just do what you like." And what kept happening was then people would get a horrible injury, and I'd look at myself and I'd say, "You're a coward. Like, how did you not have the guts to say no? What you're doing is dangerous. Cut that out." Because the nice guy routine actually didn't help anyone because I didn't feel good about myself when they got injured. The kid didn't get any help from me.
Yeah.
All they got was almost a tacit endorsement of their behavior because I didn't actually put my foot down. So by that point in my career, I was like, no, what you're doing is wrong. You're going to get injured. Cut it out. I was pretty straightforward about it. You need to be doing this, this, and this, not that, and that. Anyway, maybe 3-4 years later, I bumped into them at a gym. And
Different
gym. Yeah. I was just doing my own training, and I said, "Oh,
so they didn't take your advice?
No, they went away, and he kept pursuing the same program.
He ignored you. Yep.
And I said, "Oh, how's it all going? How's your basketball going?" And because no hard feelings, like I just wanted to, get a good result. Yeah. And the dad was really sheepish, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, he's had to quit. His hips are really shot. You were right. We should have listened to you."
Yeah.
And credit to him for
admitting
that.
Yeah.
That would be a bitter pill to swallow. But yeah, it was just that he was doing this unmodified stuff that is
in inappropriate volumes, probably.
Yeah.
Because the full depth stuff isn't itself dangerous. It's when that's all you do and you create asymmetries and biases in that direction.
I think it's not dangerous for certain people, but I do think also that you're just putting the hips, an otherwise bulletproof joint that never causes any trouble, into some pretty extreme ranges of motion under load.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I take that back. for the right body.
For the right body, yeah, go for it.
But there aren't many of us that are like that. We're talking about 1 to 2% of the population.
Maybe it's a 5, but it's definitely not.
It's definitely not 30 or 40. It's not a majority thing here.
Yeah. So that would be my cautionary tale is that the value is in modifying these lifts and getting the value out of them for you rather than satisfying the criteria of competition demands.
Yeah. If you have no plans to compete, then you can. Then the rules really open up, and you can.
You can do it. It's not a church. There's no heresy. You can do it exactly how you want, provided it's got common sense dictating it.
Yeah, nice.
And the other thing is, don't drop it on your face. Despite when you do all of that and you do the modifications, there's still that danger of dropping on your face.
The bar is still up around your chin or over your head. Yeah.
Shout out to Ali Drennan, who's now playing for. Where's Drennan playing for now?
Not sure.
I think North Melbourne Footy Club in the women's AFL. And
sitting on top of the ladder as we speak. Yeah.
As a youngster, so she was training with us, and she refused. So she refused to concede. She was doing a hang clean, 40 kilos, and refused to concede that she did not have it, because she's like very determined. She's a very determined kid then, and very determined now. She's awesome. And she brought the bar down and smashed herself on the nose, good and proper.
Yep.
And like, it wasn't broken or anything, and it was very funny. We all had a good laugh because she was crying a lot. But it was a great example of what she refused to do was concede she didn't have it.
Yep.
So if you are doing LA lifting, be very willing to go, no, don't got this, and just step back, let that bar bounce.
Yeah, get yourself some space. Make sure you're doing a nice, open, clean area, and then if a rep goes a little wrong, just push that bar out in front of you. Just let it bounce on the ground. Yep.
That's what those plates are for.
Yep, they're called bumper plates.
Don't bounce them on the floor, not your nose. Would be my exactly. They're called bumper plates.
Yeah, exactly. So,
all right,
I think it's a good place to leave it.
We've got probably not that many resources for this. Have we really resources?
No, we mentioned the AIS coach was Julian.
Yep. I'll try and
find it. Dig up his name.
Yep. And we'll see if we can find that YouTube with the Chinese.
The Chinese jumpers.
Yeah.
Chinese or Korean. I've forgotten exactly where they were. The national team.
I hope it was Chinese. I don't feel bad.
No, they were Chinese or South Korean, I believe.
It was pretty cool.
But remember just
I may be mixing up two stories too, because I remember Tom Ma, who was in China, telling me about a tiny little 5'5" ollie lifter just standing on the basketball hoop, looking at the ring, ball in hand, and then just going bang and jumping up and dunking it. And Tom was like, "What?"
Yeah. I've heard that story, but I've also seen the video, so the video definitely exists. I'll see if we can dig that up.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys, and see you soon.
Nice.